When we brought him home, he was just like any of our other kids, you know, always sleeping, always wanting to eat, right?
Now the family's complete. We thought it was, but now, now we know it really is.
You giving it to Shelby?
As he began to develop, he really developed like the other kids. You know, they all have their own personalities, and Connor definitely had his, and Connor was actually very expressive, you know, in the things that he would do. I remember us talking to him and him repeating words, and we'd say, "Hi, Connor, Day loves you," and he'd say, "Love you." He was kind of your all-American boy.
About a year and a half, we kind of just started noticing, kind of playing by himself. And at first we just thought, wow, he's just a great, easy baby, plays by himself, doesn't cause, any problems. But it was, just the language and talking. He wasn't, talking a whole lot. He'd kind of point at things or, make motions to stuff.
Well, for a male, that's the hardest thing, A mom, they attach themselves to the child where whatever's wrong with them, that becomes their mission. A dad attaches himself emotionally with their child. So when at one time you were saying, "I love you," and they said, "I loved you back," or you were giving them a hug and they gave you a hug back, or you'd say, "Come over and play," and we'd play together. When that shifts, it's like somebody puts a wall in between you and your son. It's like a dividing emotionally, because I couldn't. I would say stuff to him and he would turn away and he wouldn't look at me, or, he stopped talking altogether. I'd want to play with him, and he would walk away and go sit in a corner. Sam calls me from upstairs, and she said, Craig, get up here as soon as you can." And I thought there was something wrong, and so I run upstairs. She says, "I was putting Connor to bed. I was reading him books like I do every night." And she said, all of a sudden, he just began to speak. He began to say one word after another word. So it's been 5 years since I've heard him even speak 4 words together. And she says, Connor, say it for Daddy." And he lifted up his little head and he just began to speak. And he said, "This is my Bible. I am what it says I am.
I have what it says I have. I can do it says I can do.
And he said, "This is my Bible pledge." And we just began to break down, crying. It was, to say it was a miracle would be an understatement.
And it was almost like a declaration that, that was when, we're like, okay, God's got this little guy. And, that it was just that, that faith of the first words he's saying is a declaration over his life. Having Connor and being so involved at church, we were just noticing we can't just put him in the typical children's classroom.
Like this, go blue.
Blue.
All right. What color is this?
Green.
So I was finding myself staying home, while Craig was going, and we're like, okay, if this is happening with our family, and this is, our job is to be at church and helping families, then, we can't be the only ones going through this.
And God spoke to me one day and he said, "Craig," he says, "look at the children's facility we have here." He says, "Looks like Disneyland." And he said, "Those kids deserve the very best, just like every other child."
So he started the Champions class. That's a class for special needs children. Today there are over 300 kids in that class. Other churches across the country have copied our model. And now there are Champions classes for children with special needs in churches all across the country.
It's really not just a Sunday school program, it's really a developmental center for kids that any church can adapt and use. And it's got a physical therapy room and a sensory room and an educational room and a spiritual therapy room with curriculum. What God has done through this little boy is unbelievable.